What I'm learning more about and really learning in myself and in the people that I work with is that when it comes to what our hearts truly desire, is that we're meeting lots of different aspects of our lives on a daily basis. So we're thinking about our connection, we're thinking about our health and our happiness, but we're also thinking about what our meaning is, what our purpose is. When we get confused about eating, when rules dominate, we tend to disconnect with that feeling and that sense of what our body and our mind really need. And we need to get ourselves back to that situation of balance so that we can trust in our own innate ability to hear what our body needs, to listen to that, and to give it what we need to give it. Diets, plans, rules, somebody else's thoughts on what you should do last only as long as your willpower does. And when you're in that situation where you're following somebody else's set of rules and guidance, a tension can be created in your body. You may have noticed it in the times that you've done a diet and you've experienced it, your cravings are more intense. You may have physical discomfort in your body, and other times when you're living in a way that you're out of touch with what your body and your mind really wants, and your body is beginning to shout at you and tell you, I'm not feeling okay here, there's something not so right. Or when you're on the diet and those feelings of guilt and shame, and I better start Monday, or I better go for a run so I can eat this cake. Our mind and our body, it's all disconnected. And the willpower, we need willpower. We all need willpower every whole single day to move forward. But let's not waste it on something that doesn't really give us the desired result that we want. So when you think about life, when you think about this, when you go on holiday or when the weather is as beautiful as it is right now, you're not stressed, you're eating nourishing and satisfying foods, you're sleeping, getting a bit of sun, you're moving about a bit more, and you're connecting to humans. That brings you a whole heap of happiness. People I work with, they tell me all their symptoms disappear when they're on holidays. Isn't this why? So if you want to improve your relationship with your food, what are you really trying to do? You're trying to learn how to eat in balance, and ultimately that will then impact how you live your life in balance. Living the life in a way that's meaningful for you, because I don't know what your meaning is, I don't know what your purpose is, I don't know what your connection needs are. And we're talking a lot about flow now, so that's what this balance and flow is all about. It's about being present enough in your actions, being present enough in your eating, being present enough in your daily choices to reap the rewards of the actions that you're doing. So when I talk about being present enough, it means that you're noticing things are happening. It's intentions that you set. You're present enough to notice that what I'm going to do here now is not going to be a positive for me later, but I can still make the choice to do it. It's my choice. Or being present enough to notice that how my life is rocking at the minute is truly not meeting my heart's desire. There's something that I need to change. Or being present enough to notice that I've gotten halfway through a slice of cake and that's enough for me today, and I'm happy to say no. Or being present enough to notice actually my body's crying out for and actually telling me that I would love an Al salad now. That's being present, and that's noticing really how you can balance yourself by balancing your relationship with food. I'm going to share with you 4 valuable lessons I learned on my journey of improving my relationship with food, and ones that I see my clients continually learn the same thing. And that's really powerful, because as one human to another, we can all learn from each other. You don't have to do what I'm doing. You have the choice to sit back and reflect and try it out, test drive it, see, does this actually work for me? And if it does, I'm so happy for you. But these are my lessons, and they're what I've learned. So what's the first valuable lesson I learned about eating and achieving more of that normal feeling around food is lowering your expectation of what the food can give you. So many people who now come to me they have that deep sense or belief that the food is going to be the answer to all of the ailments or the troubles or worries that they have. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about why you might think that, and have a little understanding for yourself that if you have been there or you are thinking this, then it's okay to feel like this, because there's a process that's happened and we can easily undo that process and relearn things. So let's think about what this word expectation means. So expectation is defined as a belief or an anticipation of a future event. So that's often attached to a cognitive, so a thinking, a reasoning and remembering sort of action of your mind, or an emotional. So expectation, a belief about a future event. So you already have a belief in your mind, or an emotion to reaffirm a belief in your mind that something is going to happen in the future when you do this. So that means it influences our perception of the experience. What does that mean? So if we tell ourselves that something is going to happen if we do something, then our perception of the experience will reaffirm that message in our mind. So our beliefs about our food really, really matters. It has an impact on what you choose to eat. It has an impact on your attitudes to food, but it also has an impact on your pleasure. And if you've listened to me before, or you've read my work before, you'll know that one of my very key fundamental values in all of my work with people is bringing people back to their own sense of pleasure. And what's pleasurable for you and what's pleasurable for me is very, very different. So your beliefs impact the pleasure you derive from your food. And I have done a lot of reading and a lot of research now to understand that actually, when we really want to get to the nuts and bolts of having a balanced relationship with food, we do eat to nourish our bodies, but we also eat to pleasure. So food, we have to be connected in with our own sense of pleasure. So let's come back to these beliefs, and I want to tell you about a study from a guy called Yeoman in 2008. So they were looking at the expectations that people, or the expectation people had, and how that influenced the perception of an unusual flavored ice cream, smoked salmon. And they had one group that were eating the ice cream, the ice cream under the label of ice cream. And they had a second group who were eating the same ice cream, the smoked salmon flavor, under the label of savory mousse. So what was really interesting for us to understand, because we don't need to understand everything about the studies, but what was really interesting was that the feedback from the group that was labeled as ice cream was that they disliked the ice cream and that it was more salty. On the other group, that they didn't find the ice cream so bad. A lot of them found it actually quite pleasant, and they noticed that they reported that it was less salty. So here you can see that the labeling of the food, what would have been really interesting in that study, and I haven't read the full, any subsequent studies to this, but what would have been really interesting is for the groups to swap over and taste again, or to even taste without the labels. But the labeling of food in this situation really influenced what people thought, and it really influenced the experience of the eating. So for you, if you really want to get yourself into a place where you can focus in on the sensation of eating and bring yourself back into how you actually feel in the moment, how your body responds, not your expectation, lowering down that expectation of what the food is going to bring to you. You're focusing in on the sensation that your body is bringing to you. There's a couple of things that you can draw your attention to. And let's come back to those beliefs. The beliefs are really, really important. Have a think about, what kind of beliefs do you have about food? Am I good if I eat the cake, or am I bad? Am I healthier if I have salads every day, or am I not? Am I wrong if I choose to have a dessert when we're out and nobody else is? So these kinds of beliefs really are going to influence how that pleasure sensation, really how you respond and how you understand that pleasure sensation within your body. And that's your guide, that's your key to tell you when you're really full and to stop eating. So think about that one. And remember that food has no moral value. So as I was lowering my expectations, I was bringing myself back into the reality and realization that food has no moral value. All foods are equal. Some foods are more nutritious than others. Some foods give us more nutrition and less pleasure. Some foods give us more pleasure and less nutrition. So all foods can have a place in your eating habits. But we've got to think about taking away that moral value. And also remembering that food is not a magic potion. It's not the answer. If you think about that belief and expectation, often the expectation is when I get under control with this food situation, when I'm in control of what I'm eating, then I'm going to feel. But it's not a magic potion, the food. Because if you're eating the salads and the diet plan and the food that's giving you no pleasure, then your sensation, your expectation, the result, the reward, it's not delivering. It's not delivering what you're desiring. And it's not bringing you back to balance, which is what we're talking about, that ultimate sense that what we all really want is that feeling in our heart's desire that we're balanced, that we're meeting our needs from many aspects of emotional, social, physical, purpose, value, spiritual, all of these. When we talk about the relationship with food that you might want to have, we're kind of talking about just being normal. We can have the cake one day and we can leave it the next day. We can have the salad one day without feeling we have to. We can have the burger without thinking we need to go on a run afterwards to make up for it. So valuable lesson number 2 for me was really learning to understand this gut-brain highway. Because when we're trying to achieve this balance, right, if we're worried about what we're eating, it's just going to go against us. And when we're out of balance, our natural instinct is to focus on the eating, which again goes against us. Instead of focusing on the eating, we really want to focus on the feeling. And when I started my journey, that whole place of mind-body connection or mindfulness or self-awareness felt really far away from me. So what I was able to hook into was this gut-brain axis. And it taught me so much because our brain really responds to how we feel. And when you begin to understand the science around the gut and you begin to think about the gut bacteria, there's feelings that we get, that sensation before you go to do an exam. You get that like little butterflies in your stomach. That's all there for a reason. It's all there for a purpose. There's also sensations that we get sometimes when we get cravings. We often think it's our willpower and it's our lack of discipline and we're not good enough, and why are we having cravings? But maybe it's just the gut talking to us, and our gut is saying, because there is actually evidence out there to show that if you're craving particular kinds of foods, you're going to have particular gut bacteria that have overgrown or maybe become more populated than we'd like them. When we begin to understand that, it kind of feels like, okay, well, now I've got something tangible to work with, because the other piece is all like emotional and that sort of stuff. And maybe we're just not at the place where we're able to reach that or access that. It feels like, you're reading it going, that makes sense, but actually I haven't got a clue how to do it. So understanding that gut-brain highway can be really powerful to allow you just to dial things down, to start to listen into what your gut is telling you about how you're feeling, how your mind is responding, how your body is responding to the things that you're doing. And in my next 2 points, you're going to understand what to do with that learning then when you get it. So it's like you're using your gut-brain highway as a navigation system to pull you, when you're so far off balance, back into being more in balance, so that your body and your brain and your gut are all beginning to feel more happy, more content. They have meaning, they have purpose. Valuable lesson number 3, the art of listening. So what we talked about there, that gut-brain connection, We all have an inner wisdom within us. I've shared this before and I'll share it many times again. We are always the best experts of ourselves. We're told this as mums, you know your child best. Well, how about we think about our own health in terms of ourselves as being the mother of our own health? So we know our own health best. We know our own bodies best. And next month, I'm going to talk to you a lot more about hunger and fullness and how you can start your journey of tuning into feeling those feelings of hunger and fullness more and using them to your using them to support how you're eating. But the art of listening to our bodies, it's kind of lost. We don't trust and we don't know how to hear what our body is saying to us. We don't know how to maybe believe it because of those beliefs I've talked about earlier, those beliefs or those expectations that we have from the actions that we're taking lead us to think that what our body is telling us is wrong because we've got this thought process taking over. So when we want to slow down and listen, it's often a big leap to really start into thinking about going so slow that you're really hearing. Oftentimes it's just noticing. I learned this word from my trainer or my teacher in life coaching. Notice, such a powerful word. And we used to all talk and laugh as we were learning about how we were told to go and notice what you notice. But it was a really lovely way of thinking about things, and I would like to offer that to you as well. Notice what you notice about your eating. Notice what you notice about your body before you eat. Notice what you notice about your body after you eat. And maybe hold those noticing with a little less fear and a little less worry that all is wrong or that I have done wrong. Just notice the sensations, notice the feelings, and reach out for support then from somebody who can help you to make sense of what those feelings and what those sensations really are meaning for you. When we trust ourselves, when we pull back, because remember what we're talking about in this blog is really to try and get ourselves back to that sense of balance, to what our heart desires, to feeling more at ease, to this area of flow that we talk about now, which is becoming popular. There are a couple of things that you can do to learn and to start your process of listening. So we want to breathe regularly. Breathing is really, really, really key and instrumental in understanding the sensations within our body. I did a live on Instagram a while back, and you can click here to listen to this live on the importance and the art of breathing. The other piece is when we're learning to trust our body, particularly around eating, we need to pause and enjoy our food. It doesn't matter if it's pizza or if it's sticky jellies, but if we pause and enjoy it, remember that expectation and pleasure. We're trying to cut the beliefs that we've long held that may not be serving us. And we're doing that by simply pausing and zoning into the present moment to begin to enjoy. We're checking in on our hunger and fullness. Again, tune in next month to hear more about hunger and fullness and how you can begin to teach yourself on that journey. We're stopping during our eating. We're thinking about the food that we have in front of us, not the food that somebody else has in front of them, or not the food that we wish we had in front of us, or not the food that we think we should have in front of us, or not the food that we had in front of us yesterday, or not the food we're going to have in front of us tomorrow. We're just thinking about the food that we have in front of us here. And that's really powerful in order to help you to learn to trust your body. And there's also really great learning in eating to discomfort, or breaking the rules, or maybe stepping out and challenging those beliefs that you have. There's great learning in that, because when you learn and when you eat to that discomfort, or when you eat the way you feel you shouldn't, and then you start to notice, you can reflect on what you notice. And that's a catalyst for change for you, because when you feel it in your body, that's when you can really move forward, because then your mind and your brain start to register things in a new way. You're creating new belief systems that are more in tune with how your body, how your energy system, how your gut highway, how all of that is interacting together. And the final and probably most valuable lesson that I learned on my journey, and I see so many people learning,
the same, is they're embracing the challenges. So when we work together, initially you create an overarching goal of what it is that you want to achieve. And I really work hard with you in that first session to define that goal so that it is not an exterior measure, it's more of an internal feeling. So remember, what I'm talking all about here is always how that feeling is so important. When it's exterior, it's kind of something that's away from us, and we're always searching, like we're human beings, we work on feelings and sensations. So when you got that goal set, that it's how I want to feel, it becomes really easy to embrace challenges. And when we embrace challenges, we embrace them with a purpose or an intention to learn, to find the lesson. Sometimes we don't want to find the lesson, and that's okay. But oftentimes when I work with people, they talk about this downward spiral. So the rules are broken, or the plans are wrecked because, you know, there's a meal or there's a party, and then you go to the party and you're having fun and you're deriving lots of pleasure, but it's not as nutritious as you'd like it to be. The whole scheme or system or rigid boundaries around how you're operating is just pulled apart, and they find it very difficult to fall back on track. That downward spiral starts, and then it's like 3 months, 6 months, 6 weeks, 10 days before we start again. But what we want to do and use our lessons is so that it's an upward spiral, so that incident happens where we've fallen off the wagon on a Saturday or a Sunday, and we're using that to learn and experience and grow from. We're using that not as a reason to knock ourselves down, but as a way to pick ourselves up and say, remember, every meal is an opportunity. So we are not defined by any one meal that we've had. How we use these challenges really effectively is by really learning and growing and jumping back into that self-awareness and spending as much time as you can becoming so aware of those body sensations. That allows you to notice the signs and signals quicker of what's happening for you. And as you begin to grow and develop on that, and to practice and give it time to practice these new ways of being around food, as you begin to define your own belief system, you use your strengths and your resilience to pull you back on track. You use compassion, a lot of compassion, to allow yourself and to support yourself. You use that compassion to support yourself back into using these challenges to bring you to a place that you feel more comfortable around what you eat in the longer term. So as a reminder, we've been talking about achieving balance. We've been talking about that relationship with food is so important when our life, our body, our mind might feel that little bit out of balance. And I shared with you the valuable lessons that I have learned and that I see my clients continue to learn as they work on their own relationship with food. I want you to think about this. What kind of an eater are you? Are you the normal eater who says, I'm not hungry right now, so I'm not going to eat? Or I feel like cake, so I'm going to have a cake. Or are you somebody who might be engaging in a bit of compulsive eating? You're noticing that you're mindless eating without even thinking. The food is gone and you've barely even been aware that you've had it. Are you an emotional eater where you're reaching for food automatically when you notice uncomfortable feelings around you and you're frustrated with your kids, and next thing you notice that you have a can of Coke and a slice of cake gone, or maybe a whole cake? Or are you a restrictive eater where you're spending a lot of time, you probably know better than me how many calories and fats are in specific foods. You spent your life in this cycle of shame and guilt and worrying about breaking rules because you've eaten too much, or it's not healthy enough, or you're gaining weight. These are the different kinds of relationships that we can have with food that are not really serving our health. They're not serving us in a way that is beneficial. If you want to learn how to be somebody who eats when you're hungry, or maybe eats when you have a craving and know that you'll satisfy that craving and move on. If you want to learn how to choose foods that you believe are going to satisfy you. If you want to stay connected with how your body is feeling during the eating experience and getting a deeper sense of what eating with pleasure really feels like, if you want to stop eating when you're full and notice that fullness sensation or that satisfaction sensation to your best health advantage, then you can find out how to work with me below.